We welcome you in to the Small Ball Podcast alongside our great producer, Andy. Behind the scenes, I'm Scott Ayers alongside Christian Dennis. Christian, we need to jump right into it. There's some drama here on the Small Ball Podcast. Tons of drama. Involves you and our co-host who's not here today, Trevor Maculin.
Yep. I want you to repeat that again. What'd you say?
Yeah, emphasis on Trevor, who is not here today.
Yeah, so another episode and another day that Trevor misses. So I think that moves him up on the count there of most missed podcasts.
He does own that title right now. We exclude producer Andy because he was a student. He was off abroad. But if you've been watching the show, it's kind of been a main storyline of the Small Ball Podcast is we obviously talk about small market teams. Secondly, though, it feels like who misses more episodes, Christian or Trevor?
And the thing is, the last episode that I miss, Trevor brings up the point that, you know, I got married and then I went on vacations and I missed a couple episodes and that I need to decide, well, Trevor's not even married. What's his excuse?
And also, not 4th of July.
Yeah.
Not even a holiday. After.
It's just... This is just a willy-nilly, fun in the sun trip to Sacramento that just so happens to overlap with our regularly scheduled recording on Monday nights.
Exactly. And we mentioned last week, you know, when we talked to sponsors, hey, this commitment comes first. He goes, yeah, well, Sacramento comes first. And that's why we don't have a sponsor for today's show.
Yeah, gosh, we're losing sponsorships because the lack of attendance with our podcast hosts.
Yeah, it's bad. It's something we're working on, and we know we're getting a lot of letters from the listeners to try and have a better showing. So this is us saying we are getting better, which should lead us into something that we do need to address.
Yeah.
That's the Island Boys.
Yeah. So recently, the Island Boys decided to make an OnlyFans and start creating content on there. And as you know, with OnlyFans, it's only bad content. There's no good content that comes from OnlyFans. It's very lustful, very weird.
Covenant Eyes, that could be a show sponsor.
Yeah, Covenant Eyes needs to get on OnlyFans.
And on top of that, you look at Twitter and any big tweet, it's like 4 or 5 OnlyFans girls saying, you know, I'm the thickest 18-year-old girl.
every time Woj tweets, the first comment, I'm the thickest 18-year-old, for real.
Yeah, exactly. It's like something tragic too, and it's like, that's tweet number 1, first order of business.
Yeah.
But this is different. This isn't OnlyFans female content. It's OnlyFans Island Boy content. And the reason why we need to step away from the Island Boys is because they are under some hot water because it was them making out with each other.
Yeah, so we want to make a stance here on small ball that we do not endorse incest.
No, anti.
Yeah, we are anti-incest. We're gonna put our right hands up and say we do not agree. Because you know, Island Boys are brothers.
They are brothers,
and it's not okay to kiss your brother like
or
that.
your sister
like that.
Yeah, or your first or second or third cousin.
Yeah. We don't need to keep. We don't need to get into this more, but yeah, no, we do. We are not Island.
So
Boys
we
anymore.
Unfortunately have to retire the Sacramento Kings 1 video. It was a hit, but
it did help us go viral a little bit.
But we have to put it to bed because it was. I mean, this almost feels like a tragedy.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you've known someone your whole life, and then
this happens.
They all of a sudden, you know,
start kissing each other.
They like just change the way their life is, and it's like, man, I did not picture that. But
no. But it kind of left me speechless when you sent the video. Christian sent the video to our small ball group chat, and Yeah, it was like my heart dropped. It was actually more of a jaw drop, and it was like, dude, these guys are the absolute worst. I mean, just despicable.
Yeah. So end of an era. We need to find our next thing.
Yeah, we'll find someone else to be kind of the theme song of the Kings and kind of small ball. But yeah, we denounce incest and we denounce the Island Boys. Andy, you got anything to add?
That was terrible to watch.
Yeah, don't look it up. It's terrible. It's a waste of time, and they're officially canceled by the Small Ball Podcast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know it just
It's so sad.
How do we come back from this?
I don't know. Well, here's
and it's the worst time for this to happen because it's like it's the dead of the basketball season, so we have nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
And then this pops up, and it's like, oh, now we have to address this. Our listeners don't want to hear this.
no, but we have to. It like mid basketball season, someone drops a 50-point game. It's like you mentioned it in a half a sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Island Boy stuff was crazy. Anyway, Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. Right.
But instead, it's like, no, we've got to take a 5-minute segment and make sure our sponsors are okay with this.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'll do a quick transition. I bought a actual, for our YouTube watchers, Spotify, you can close your eyes or whatever, but I actually bought an almost authentic Christian Brown jersey.
Almost. Keyword. Almost.
They got the 0 right. The jersey looks okay, but then in the top right corner of the jersey, they tried to put the NBA title in the corner of my jersey, and it honestly looks like one of us did the stitching.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad. It looks like a middle school's like sewing project gone wrong.
It absolutely does.
Did they even wear those jerseys in the finals?
They did. I believe they wore them either game 3 or game 4.
Okay. For the listeners, it's Mile High City jerseys that are blue.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, for our YouTube watchers that are blind,
Hey, you know what? We get a lot of blind viewers. Matt G,
yes, he's colorblind.
our intern, colorblind, couldn't see red. He couldn't even see some of this jersey.
Yeah. So actually, it's a good description.
It is. It's a very good description.
But yeah, this just felt like a healthy segue from our last segment. We can talk about a jersey that is a little bit more lighthearted, to forget, the before stuff.
Yeah, and plus, it's anytime you could talk about, finals MVP candidate.
Yeah.
You got to bring it up.
People forget that Christian Brown, after game 3, was a finals MVP candidate.
He was like the 5th, potential option, but hey, it's
Top 5.
top 5.
He can one day tell his grandkids, there was a point in the NBA Finals where I was the top 5 finals for NBA Finals MVP.
It's funny is did he even make first team rookie all year?
No, first or second.
What about third?
No, they didn't even think about making a third, which is disrespectful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to go from there to finals MVP candidate, you gotta talk about him for most improved next year, right?
You would have to, because he's gonna be. I mean, let's just picture his stats next year.
Okay.
Probably, let's say 22 minutes a game.
All right.
He probably averaged 2-3 points a game.
Yeah, I'm looking up his stats right now.
Yeah, look up. I'll kind of guess. It was 2 or 3 points a game on not efficient shooting, and his free throw percentage was in the 60s, I believe.
Okay, so he averaged about 15 and a half minutes per game.
Yep.
4.7 points.
All right.
2.4 rebounds, 0.8 assists on 49.5%.
Yeah. What was his free throw percentage?
Free throws.
This is really good.
ESPN does. Oh, yep. ESPN does have it. Frick. Dang it. 62 and a half.
Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
So that gets bumped by at least 10%. He goes to 24 minutes a game, scores 8 a night with 7 rebounds, 5 assists.
7 rebounds.
I'm just trying to think.
Let me repeat what he had.
Yeah.
4.7 points
Yep.
per game, 2.4 rebounds,
Yeah.
and 0.8 assists.
So he's more than doubling all of his stats next year.
That's insane growth.
Yeah, that's most improved player growth.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's most improved if I've ever heard of it.
Yes, thank you.
If you're doubling everything you're doing, yeah, I guess you win.
That's amazing growth.
Yeah.
But at the grand scheme of it, like looking, if he even doubles his stats, like his stats still aren't that great. Like he's averaging like under 10 points a game.
Yeah.
He would be averaging 1.5 assists if he doubled his.
Yes, that's awesome.
That is improvement. Like,
Yeah, that's the most improved. Like, if you were to tell someone, "Hey, how'd you do at your job last year?" Pretty good, but I doubled everything this year. You hear that? You're like, "Oh my gosh, that's really good."
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
So just something to think about. Christian Brown.
He's gonna be on MIP watch here at Small Ball, so
Yes.
we'll definitely allude back to this.
Yeah,
like
this
later.
is something we can touch back on. Which, speaking of alluding to, that was because we're just in the dead of the season. I know Summer League Championship, it's being played tonight, so we won't know the results. But really, it's the dead of summer. Okay, so we figured let's 2020 this. Let's look back. Maybe there were some narrative storylines that were true all along that we wanted to just touch on and talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we have to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
yes. Yes.
like think about it though. Like when it first happened, it was the biggest thing that happened in the summer, right? Or one of the biggest things.
It was.
They acquired Rudy Gobert, and we sat on this podcast, and for the most part, most likely excluding Andy, because I know he's a big Gobert hater. But we were all like, yeah, we like this. You know, this makes the Wolves serious. And it was just a dumpster fire of the first year.
Yeah. It was super disappointing. Yeah, and Cat was out too for big chunks of it, and Gobert missed some time. So they didn't really build any cohesion. So year 2 is going to be super interesting because Conley doesn't look like he's going to make any trades. Cat's been a goober. Like, he almost is putting a target on his back to trade. If I'm a GM, and after this, campaign he went on some of these podcasts, it'd be like, dude, you got to just stop talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one looking back. Okay, yeah, maybe 2 giant guys that clog up the hole. Maybe that's not great.
Yeah, one, I hate Rudy Gobert. Don't want to let that be known. 2, me and Scott were talking before this, and I was asking him about the segments that we're bringing up, and he asked me to think of one for these. That was the exact one I thought of.
Minnesota Timberwolves.
I didn't even have to, it didn't take me more than 5 seconds to realize that, I was right, because I hate Gobert, and I don't think the Timberwolves have figured it out yet. And he's good. Cat has potential. Gobert sucks. Conley, our king.
Yeah, I think one thing that we learned this year with the Minnesota Timberwolves is Anthony Edwards is the guy.
Yeah.
And then, now the question is, can Cat be that second player next to him that can perform and help him out? Start of the season, they had D'Lo at point guard. Now they bring in Mike Conley, which I think provides a lot of veteran leadership. And then also he gels with Gobert through the Utah days. So, it was too short of an experiment to break it up.
Right.
Which will be interesting coming this season. But, man, what we talked about last year and what we thought the Wolves would be was not anywhere close.
No. And, another thing, too, is, that Gobert trade set the precedent for all trades moving forward.
Yes.
It screwed up the entire market.
Yeah. Now everything, if you want, a bare minimum star, you have to give away your entire future.
Can we also talk about how first round picks don't really mean anything in the moment? Everyone's talking about, Miami Heat to get Dame, they need to give up 4 first round picks. Well, if they're giving up first round picks and Dame is on that team, the value of that first round pick is
Mid-20s.
so low. You're not getting anyone who has this crazy upside to replace a player like Dame in the 20s. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's just very unlikely.
And yeah, like the thing is too is like you can have all these picks, but 90% of the time they're going to be used in another trade. Like you can't even count on them anymore because they're just going to keep getting shuffled around.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see it be used, but yeah, it like I don't even know what a first round pick is worth anymore. Like it's so hard to really define that.
Just maybe why there's like that huge. It's like we need 5 first round picks so one of these can hit or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And if you're Miami doesn't even have the assets. Like
Yeah, let's just face it. Miami doesn't have the assets. They keep trying to throw Tyler Hero at Portland, and Portland's like, we don't want Tyler Hero. We have Scoot Henderson. We have Anthony Simons. We have Shaden Sharp. We have all these guards that can't even defend. Why would we want another one? It doesn't make any sense.
I'll be Miami.
Yeah, go for it.
But it's Tyler Hero.
Heat culture.
You don't want he has
But it's heat culture Tyler Hero.
Wait,
Heat culture is so fake.
Jack Harlow sing about him.
So fake.
Yeah.
Like if I'm Portland, I am yelling at Miami. Like I am not making a trade with Miami because I just feel so disrespected.
Yeah. And honestly, if Dame does get traded, Portland has kind of a fun youth project going on. They have some really fun young players that we'll talk more about. But they have some guys where you're like, okay, like Scoot Henderson, obviously the first one that comes to my mind. Then Shaden Sharp, and you're like, whoa, these are 2 guys in the last 2 years that could be absolute dogs for Portland.
Absolutely.
My thing is like with this whole like Dame thing, like it's so annoying at this point. But why does he want to leave? Like it's a good situation you're going to get.
I mean, he wants to be competitive. He wants to win a championship, and he just doesn't feel like Portland has the assets to put him in a position to where they're competitive.
Do you know who would never trade for Dame?
Who?
Toronto.
Toronto would never trade for Dame because they wouldn't trade for Kevin Durant by trading Scotty Barnes.
Yeah. They wouldn't trade a guy who just had we talked about it. NBA University is a great follow on Twitter. They give a bunch of stats. Anytime there's any sort of efficiency tweet, always near the bottom is Terry Rozier and Scotty Barnes.
Every time.
Every time.
Scotty Barnes, great rookie season. But you know who had a great rookie season once?
Say it.
Michael Carter Williams.
Oof.
I think we may have talked about this on the podcast before. If not, we've talked about it off air. But if you look at Michael Carter Williams stats and Scotty Barnes stats, they're very similar.
Yeah, Scotty Barnes too. Let me just really quickly, and there is a running bit kind of on this podcast because anytime our first episode when we talked about Toronto, we were like, "This is we ride with Toronto.
Yeah.
They don't get the same kind of coverage as other teams." And all the comments were like, no, like we're the biggest market actually in all the NBA. It's all of Canada for Toronto and stuff like that. And we're like, guys, we want to toss you a bone. And then it was just comment after comment like that. So it turned into like Captain America Civil War.
Not even like the best Canadian players in the NBA want to go play in Toronto. You guys ever thought about that?
Damn. No,
Like you don't see like SGA or like Jamal. Like, I mean, Jamal has a different story now, but like, you don't see them like trying to get their way out of their team to go play for Toronto.
But not a lot of players play for their hometown though. They try to, but
Debatable. I mean, there's so many players that are from LA,
yeah.
which
LA,
like
yeah.
the Lakers get whoever they want, sort
Sure.
of thing. So like, there's that. That's like the only like. Maybe Chicago.
Yeah,
There's some players from Chicago.
Reggie Jackson, he's from Denver.
He's from Denver too. They just Chauncey
Legend.
Billups played for Denver. He's
Chauncey,
from Denver.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah,
I understand your point though.
yeah, it's a good point, Andy. Thank you, Andy. But here were his stats his rookie year. He shot 49% from the field, about 30% from three. He averaged, 15.3 points per game, 3.5 assists, 7.5 rebounds in year 2. 15 3 points per game, less rebounds per game, 0.7 more assists per game, just 0.1 more blocks per game, which that doesn't really matter. But then here's where it gets ugly. He took more shots and had a worse field goal percentage. 49% his rookie year, 45% his sophomore year, and then from 3, he was 0.28% from 3, which 28%, excuse me, not 0.28, 28%. Which, you know what? Sophomore slumps happen in the NBA. Our good friend Trevor, obviously, is a big Scotty Barnes fan, so he can't defend him right now. Hard to believe he'll be a top 10 player unless some of those numbers do improve.
Yeah, I mean, we mainly wanted to talk about this because Trevor's not on the podcast, so he can't fight us. But Trevor has gone on the record to say that Scotty Barnes is a generational type talent. And I'm here, Scott's here, Andy's here to say that he's not.
No.
And that's okay. Like, he could still be a great NBA player, a good NBA player, but
who would he comp to? Who would you compare Scotty Barnes to? I'll look up their sophomore year, and then I can call us out, hey, we're acting too fast.
To me, he's a guy who does a little bit of everything. So there's so many different player archetypes. Like, Draymond is probably the best out of anyone in that category. But then you have guys like who's actually his teammate right now, Thaddeus Young, who's another guy who can kind of do a little bit of everything, but he's not necessarily great at anything. Mm-hmm. And again, like, this is okay. Like, you're a very diverse player. Like, that's great.
Yeah, that's great. And Draymond's an amazing player.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. So we're saying Scotty Barnes could be a Hall of Famer.
Easily.
Was Draymond Green ever a top 10 player in the NBA?
No.
No. But he still could be a Hall of Famer.
Still could be a Hall of Famer. Just probably not.
So there's our Toronto propaganda, which the reason why some of this stems as well, we made a proposed trade when Kevin Durant was on the block. And we're like, imagine a trade. You give away Scotty Barnes and maybe some draft capital for Kevin Durant. And the comments were like, that's a terrible decision. We don't want Durant. He's washed, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa.
It's Kevin Durant.
It's Kevin Durant.
This is so old news, but I mean, again, we'll say it. The lineup of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., OG, Kevin Durant, Pascal Siakam.
Gas.
That's so good.
Gas.
Yeah.
Especially in the East, which this year and last year have proved is so winnable. The East, that was my other thing. It's not as good as we act like it is. Like, the teams at the top are kicking the teams at the bottom's behinds, but it's winnable. So if you're Toronto, like, why wouldn't you try to go? It doesn't matter, but
It doesn't matter. I mean, that brings up a good point. Like, maybe we need to, now that, this whole point of this segment is, now that we've been away from the NBA, we've been able to digest some things and really look back at what we thought and what is true reality. And it's just the East is not as good as the West. And we talked about the Milwaukee Bucks being the best team in the NBA and that they had little to no flaws and they're a perfectly, structured basketball team. And then the first round comes and they lose to the Miami Heat, who eventually go on to win the Eastern Conference Final and go to the finals and lose to the Nuggets. Like, it just shows how wide open the East is. And I mean, maybe seeding doesn't necessarily matter in today's NBA, but it's still wild for an 8 seed
to beat a 1 seed.
Yeah, to go to the finals.
Yeah, and it really didn't feel, maybe I'm just misreading this, really didn't feel like anyone was super hard on the Bucks. Hand up, I know I wasn't super hard. They're a small ball team. We love the Bucks. Maybe there needs to be, granted, they did fire their coach. Mm-hmm. Coach Bud's gone, really bad coaching, but they blew leads in like 2 or 3 of those games. And do you know who didn't close? Granted, he was a little hurt. Giannis.
Giannis.
Yeah, I feel like that's why they get a cop out. Giannis was hurt. Middleton didn't play for almost the past year and a half.
But they still had 60+ wins.
yeah,
That Miami team was sputtering. They barely survived Chicago. It wasn't like Miami was, and I get it. They hit some tough shots. But Milwaukee's offense late in games was really, really bad. And it was not a championship caliber offense last year.
not at all.
Which it scares me because Giannis, top 3 player, if he loses some of his athleticism, what does that do to him as a player?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to just kind of see the course of his career.
Yeah.
Because
he still has some good years
Yeah,
left.
I mean, he's still in his prime. He's still going to be Giannis. But when does his prime end? When does he slow down? And then once he starts to slow down, what does he do to adapt his game?
Yeah.
Because he's coming up on year 6, 7, 8 maybe, and he still can't shoot the ball. So it's and some people, that's just some people's game. He probably just has insanely massive hands, and the ball is just so small that he just I don't know. I'm making up excuses for him.
10 years. He's played 10 years.
10 years. Oh wow, I made him younger than I
Yeah.
thought. But guys like Shaq, Shaq was just physically bigger than anyone. But the way today's NBA is going is you still need athleticism and quickness. A Shaq-like player doesn't really perform very well.
Now,
in this
I did
league.
say this. The counter is LeBron's almost 40. If Giannis can fall whatever genie LeBron has had, then maybe that increases longevity. The difference is LeBron's always had a decent mid-range, actually a good mid-range, and a decent three-point shot. Giannis is the best player in transition. There's not a player better than him in the NBA. But if he loses that, I mean, that's what Miami kind of limited him to, just playing the half court. And some of it was injury, but some of it was just whoa, that's the shot we're taking. Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if he almost changes the NBA a little bit and goes more back towards a back to the basket post up player, because I mean when he gets to that position, he's pretty hard to stop.
Yeah, agreed.
And although the way the NBA is going, it's fast paced guards, shooting 3-pointers. Maybe he's just so good that he can just alter it to where it's fits his strength.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Giannis, I said at the beginning, I say at the end, he's a top 3 player in the NBA. This is more of where is he 3 or 4 years from now?
Yeah, this is
5
way
years
too
from now.
far
Yeah.
into advance.
Yeah.
He's nowhere near this right now,
Yeah.
but just something
he
to think
just showed
about.
some flaws. We'll just say it was injury out of respect for us, our Bucks fans. But yeah, the East, not as good as we all said it was. Which both conferences super open, but in their own way. I think the West is super open because every team just feels loaded.
Yeah. I mean, the Mavs didn't even make the playoffs, and they have Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah, honestly, I'm reflecting back on this season. It's really interesting how things didn't pan out.
The weirdest season.
Everybody thought the Mavs are a lock because the way that they whooped the Suns.
Dude, the
last
Kings
year.
were the 3rd best team in the West. Who could have predicted that?
Yeah, the top 3 were Nuggets, Grizzlies, and the Kings.
Yeah.
No one would have guessed that.
No, everyone would have picked the friggin' Lakers, Warriors, Suns.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... It was a really weird season.
It was fun though.
It was really fun. And it was so interesting because the Pelicans in December were the number 1 team in the West, and then they just completely fell out of playoffs because of injuries.
Yeah, they combusted. Yeah, when I see people say Zion is bad or Zion's a bust, first of all, look at that. Because Zion was healthy, made an all-star game. Zion's issue is just staying healthy right now. But when he plays, he's an all-star.
MVP.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's an MVP type guy.
He's an MVP candidate. So when I hear him get called a bust, I'm like, maybe for where he was drafted, it's not what they were hoping for yet. The guy is really great at basketball.
You know who I blame?
Who?
Amazon.
Ooh. I like that.
Wait,
Where's this going?
just let that sink in. Amazon.
Hot seat.
Yeah, Amazon has ruined everyone's expectations because of their fast delivery.
Yeah.
And so maybe Zion's injuries, his career, because he's not dominating, having MVP seasons, playing for all-star games, is because people expected him to be in his prime or one of the best players in the NBA so quickly.
Yeah.
And so they just expected it. And so just because it hasn't gone to people's expectations, he's now considered a bust.
Yeah, which is kind of unfair because even Joel Embiid had some similarities where he started slow. He had injuries, and it took him a while, and he still has battles with injuries every now and then, but the guy just won MVP. So why can't Zion be there? Granted, he's had a weird offseason with callback some OnlyFans models speaking out, but it turns out some of them are also cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So that's a whole nother tangent. But yeah, Zion, to call him a bust is just like you haven't watched him play. He's amazing at basketball.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if next year we're seeing the Pelicans in the playoffs and they could very well be the first seed. I would not be surprised at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. We're doing, looking back 2020 vision. What is looking forward kind of vision? What is that called?
What isn't there a better vision than 2020?
21 and 21. I don't know.
This is a good podcast segment.
Better.
Yeah. Anything else, Andy? I feel like we kind of covered the most.
Shout out the Cavs. They're about to win the championship summer league game tonight.
Yep. Shout out Cavs. Cam Whitmore. Yeah. Great pick.
Yeah, he was.
You say Cam Whitmore?
Wait, no, he was.
He's just on the Rockets.
Rockets.
I was like, he was.
I was thinking red jersey. I was like, yeah, no, no. We were talking Cam Whitmore because last week, and the week before, I mentioned the Rockets signings. Christian mentions their youth. Cam Whitmore, summer league MVP.
Yeah,
yeah,
he's balling. He was the 20th pick. Should have been top 5.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Little attitude issue. Who cares?
I don't know, though. That's the thing. Like, I feel like it's a little early. Like, just, like, okay.
No, I agree.
He did do really well, but, like, from, like, the feedback I was seeing online, I was like, all right, let's not pick this guy. Yeah. Let's not, like, pretend like he's going to be, like, the next big thing.
No, yeah.
I have high hopes, but.
2020 vision, overreactions to Summer League are the worst.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
It is absolutely ridiculous the way people talk about one Summer League performance or another.
Yeah, and like honestly, I'm a victim to it too because I'll watch a player play and and I'll be like, "Oh, dude, he's going to be so good. Like just wait for him like to develop and everything like 3 years down the line." People are like, "What happened, bro?" And I was like,
cheeks.
"Hey, I'm not supposed to. I can't predict the future."
I'm not a bet man. Come on.
Like, come on, man.
It's like Anthony Bennett should have been the key sign of you should not believe in Summer League because he was dominant in the Summer League.
He looked amazing.
Yeah, and he turned out to being nothing more than a turd in a punch bowl.
Yeah. Also, to kind of answer that 2020 vision question, technically, 2010 vision is thought to be the maximum visual clarity.
So looking forward is
2010
vision,
which is even further back than 2020. So
maybe going back is 2010 vision. Oh, crap. I've been getting it wrong all along.
Yeah.
2010 vision about our Zion thing. I was like, crap, I was saying so much about Scotty. I'm like, why is everyone out on him? And I'm like, yeah, Scotty's not top 10 in the league ever.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, guys, I feel like that's a good point to end the show. 2010 vision. We talked about, denouncing the Island Boys. And then we talked about all the things we need to talk about.
Yeah. Simple as that. Summer's going to be a wild one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, stick with us during the summer. We are going to just kind of go on tangents like we did today.
We have some fun game ideas.
We do. We have some very fun game ideas, some more trivia. We're going to do our 1 year celebration, which is really exciting. And when that happens, it's going to be sweet. But until then, for our great producer Andy and Christian Ennis, I'm Scott Ayers. We say so long for now. We'll see you next week.
We welcome you in to another episode of the Small Ball Podcast.
Hey, great job. You made it to the end of the video. We thank you so much for watching us here on the Small Ball Podcast. We're the only channel covering small to mid-market teams. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Find us on Instagram at Small Ball Podcast. Thanks so much, guys.